and welcome to episode 21 of Abbott and Costello Meet the Podcast. And because it's episode 21, I feel like I should say there will be no drinking during this podcast. My name's Jerry Shario, and I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you an actor, director, playwright, musician, co-author of the book this whole thing is sort of based on, the annotated Abbott and Costello, and not the least being the man who is the host of this podcast. That's about the best I can say for him right now. Nick Santa Maria.
Oh, you said no drinking. I'm sorry. Drinking. I was drowning.
There'll be no thinking during this podcast. No,
that's for sure. If it's us, you could bet on that. Wow, here we are. Here we are. It's already episode 21.
I know.
It's amazing, you know? And this podcast is over a year old now.
Yes.
Incredible. Just incredible. But I want to say one thing, and this is very important. I want everyone to listen up. If you're a fan of this podcast, I want you to listen to me. Our last episode, Buck Privates Come Home, had one of our lowest ratings on listenership on YouTube. I always check to see how things are going. And most are good. You know, some are in the thousands, some are in the 2000s. This was just over 300. And that's not good. That's not good. So I thought about it and added some logic to this and came up with an answer. Obviously, something's wrong. So I am going to do the opposite of what we've been doing up to this point. No more jokes. No more, funny observations. No more film clips. Just straight, dry facts. So let's start. The Wistful Widow of Wagon Gap, 1947. It starred Bud Abbott and Lou Costello. Also Marjorie Main. It's 78 minutes long. Anything you want to add, Jerry?
Oh, sorry.
Did I wake you?
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. So that won't work, huh? You don't think
I don't think so. No.
No? Okay. Well, I guess we'll go back to the other thing. All right, we're back. I just had to shake the cobwebs out of my legs. All right.
Two things. First of all, you're one of the few human beings I'm aware of that can actually make that noise themselves. You do it beautifully, by the way.
Thank you very much. I'm a Klaxon Anglo-Saxon.
There you go. And secondly, I just want to put a forewarning on this. For me, I'm still getting over a cold. So unfortunately, the cough shows up mostly when I'm laughing. Oh. And so that's going to be an issue, I'm sure.
Not if I do it the way I explained and kept it very
please don't.
Dry. Okay, so
please don't.
We'll give up the dryness for the coughing.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, dryness for wetness.
I like it.
Okay. Cool. I'm into kinky stuff. All right. So it's episode 21, and we're looking at a movie that is very, very interesting to me. And Jerry and I were talking about this before we began. It's not only a really, really, really good Abbott and Costello movie. But it's a really, really, really good Western.
Yeah.
You know, a Western comedy, lightweight. I would pair it with like Destry Rides Again, with Jimmy Stewart and Marlene Dietrich, or even Way Out West with Laurel and Hardy. It's that kind of good. It's just, and The Paleface with Bob Hope. That's another one. Right up there with some of those great comedies. And the funny thing is, it was originally written with a straight actor, not a comedian, a straight actor in mind. And we'll get to that now as we talk about it. Robert Arthur, the producer, this is his second with the boys, he said in an interview that the new heads of Universal International, of course. I love their logo. It's like you hear church bells as
my gosh.
As the sphere is spinning. It's like, we are pretentious. We are pretentious. It's like, I miss. Yes. That shows you it's Universal. It's a Universal movie, not Ding dong, ding dong. Anyway, so we're at the new pretentious Universal International, and it's run, of course, we talked about it in the last episode that nobody listened to. Bill Getz, Bill Getz, who is Louis B. Mayer's son-in-law, so he had no help with this, and Bill Getz absolutely loved Marjorie Main, and not just loved Marjorie Main, but loved the profits that the Egg and I gathered during its release in 1947, earlier in 1947. It became like their big moneymaker that year. And I want to just say one thing before I forget about the Egg and I. It's a popular movie, even still, even today. I watched it not too long ago. Two friends of mine, Lon and Deborah Davis, they are authors. Great books. Chase, all about the Senate comedians who were Keystone Cops, of just wonderful stuff. And a great book and documentary about Francis X. Bushman as well. But they mentioned in their book about Ma and Pa Kettle, and I would look it up if I were you because it's wonderful. It introduced me to these movies. I didn't know them at all. But I had written an article about the Ma and Pa Kettle movie since I sat through all of them. And The Egg and I, which is supposedly the best, it's an A picture. It's got Claudette Colbert and Fred McMurray, big hit. The book was a major bestseller that it was based on. And as I watched the movie, I just didn't buy it. I thought to myself, here's this couple from Manhattan, and they have every sophisticated thing they could possibly want. And he gets this obsession. He was away at war, and when he came back, his dream was to have a chicken farm. And he gets her to give up her luxurious life this is like Green Acres, in New York, to go to this chicken farm. And he becomes obsessed with these chickens and the egg industry and blah, 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 much to the consternation of his wife and their marriage. And of course, there's another woman who comes in and threatens and blah, blah, blah. Now, as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, I don't buy this at all. Why would a woman follow this crazy lunatic who's obsessed, not just interested, obsessed with the chickens and the eggs and the farming and the dirt and the manure? And, and she's like usually getting her nails done, on East End Avenue. I didn't buy it. So I thought, he had to be insane and she had to be crazy for following him. Well, get this. I read up on the real story and I was correct. My instincts were correct. He was insane. He ended up in an asylum. She ended up leaving him, going back to New York, and he went crazy. I was right.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't buy the movie at all. I think it's the worst of the Ma and Pa Kettle movies, if only because it's not believable at all. But Ma and Pa Kettle, Marjorie Main and Percy Kilbride, his derby, by the way, was given to him by Al Smith in the 1920s, and he used it. Yeah, governor of New York. But anyway, the two of them were the hit of the movie, and Marjorie Main was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress as Ma Kettle, believe it or not. And the two of them were given their own series at Universal, and I think they made 9 movies. And some are better than others, but I have to say they're all really fun. They're a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
I didn't grow up with them, Jerry. They didn't show them in the New York area.
We had them, and I remember. Oh yes, I probably saw all of them before I even heard about the Egg and I.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh?
Because they were shown. Yeah, I wouldn't say regularly, but in a good rotation in the Boston market. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I used to like Boston market. Good. Fast food. But
I'm
so okay, I get that. But in New York, it's like, hey, I gotta go watch Ma and Pa Kettle, you know what I'm saying? It didn't really. I don't think they scheduled it for that reason. But we didn't get them. We didn't get them. So I saw my first Ma and Pa Kettle movies recently and really liked them. I kind of wished I did grow up on them because they were a lot of fun. But anyway, so Robert Arthur says that Bill Getz, who was running Universal International, loved Marjorie Main because of that, and he okayed this project without even thinking. Now, this project, interesting stuff. The story was written because D.D. Beecham, who was the writer, he was snowed in at his place in Helena, Montana,
Mm-hmm.
and he couldn't go anywhere. He was stuck inside his cabin, and he had books, things he hadn't looked at in years. And there were some law books, Montana law books. And he ended up looking through them, and he found an old Montana law that said if you kill a man in a gunfight, you are liable for his debts, and you have to take care of whatever widow is left over and whatever children are left over. So in essence, what you're doing is you're buying a family as soon as you kill this person. And it hit him. This would be a great story. So he wrote a short story for Collier's magazine, and it was called The Widow of Wagon Gap. She wasn't too wistful at that point. Mm-hmm. And the story was expanded upon with his friend William Bowers. And the two of them wrote a screenplay based on that story with Jimmy Stewart in mind. Now think about that.
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart comes into town. He's an innocent salesman. He accidentally shoots and kills somebody, and he's got to take on the family, right?
Yep.
You mean I have to raise those kids? Marjorie's my main squeeze. But anyway, so that's what they had in mind. And it really would have worked, honestly. If you ask me, it really would have worked. So it turns out that the two of them needed money. They needed money badly. So they got an offer from Universal to buy the story for $2,500. And then took 2 weeks, just 2 weeks, to adapt it for Abbott and Costello and Marjorie Main. Oh. And who did the adaptations? It's our golden group, Freddie Ronaldo, John Grant, and Robert Lees. Mm-hmm. And they were just warming up for the next one they were going to release. Oh, boy. I can't wait to get to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I'm already lining up people for part 2. Okay, so this movie was shot between April 29th, 1947, and June 20th, 1947. It was released in October 8th, 1947. But some important things happened during the making of this film. In fact, some very important things happened. Number one, on May 3rd, I believe it was, they opened the Lou Costello Jr. Youth Center in downtown Los Angeles, or Boyle Heights, which is a very poor section of Los Angeles, still to this day. And the place is still there, and it's still open today. It's run by the city. But they raised $350,000, which is about $5.5 million in today's money. And they opened this place for low-income families to send their children, keep them off the streets, keep them away from drugs, all of that. And that's The Boys. It's just fantastic. It's just a wonderful thing to do, and a wonderful tribute to his late son. It always touches me when I think about Lou Jr. That's just such a horrible, horrible story. Yeah. Anyway, so that's one of the things that happened. Well, on May 8th, my brother's birthday, on May 8th, Lou and their manager, Eddie Sherman, who was so important to their growth and getting them into the big time, they had a difference of opinion. And Lou was being stubborn about something. I don't know what it was. But that night, Eddie Sherman thought, you know what, since I can't get through to Lou, I'm going to call his father, Sebastian, and ask him to talk to Lou and try to make him see, what I'm trying to make him see. So he called Sebastian, and Sebastian said, don't worry about it, I'll talk to him. He called Lou, and Lou told him, Dad, don't worry about it, just relax, we're working it out, it's fine. Well, it turns out that Sebastian died that night of a heart attack. And Lou, finding out about it the next day and realizing that Eddie went to Sebastian for help, must have stressed him out and helped in killing his father. And I'm laughing because it sounds very dramatic and a little far-fetched, but Lou was that upset about it, fired Eddie Sherman, and Eddie was gone for 2 years out of their lives. So that was very important. They went on doing their own deals, with Universal and all that without Eddie Sherman. But I got news for you. They kind of needed Eddie Sherman. And Lou was acting very emotionally. So here's what happened. And this is what one thing leads to another in these stories. Now, you all know Bobby Barber. Am I right? Bobby Barber, very,
Yep.
very important to the Abbott and Costello story, is in so many of their movies, even before he was friendly with the boys and especially Lou. Well, this is what happened. Lou came on the set the day after his father passed away. And there was, it was very quiet and he was very, very serious and kind of down. And Bobby, who was just an extra in the movie, he plays a waiter in Gordon Jones's bar. And he approached Lou and said, let's take a walk, let's talk. And the two of them disappeared for a little while and had a heart-to-heart talk about death and, parents and his situation. By the time they came back, they were like best friends. And they remained that way until Lou passed away in 1959. It's interesting because Charlie Barton, the director, used to hire Bobby Barber and a guy by the name of Vince Barnett. And the two of them specialized. They were both bald little people. They were very, like 5'4",
Yeah.
and they were hired to play like pretend waiters or dignitaries or whatever. And of course, it would always end in, dropping like a plate of soup on the lady or whatever. It was always a big comical thing. And they made a nice side living doing these things. Well, because he had that reputation already, Bobby Barber, Lou hired him on every subsequent film to be sort of the court jester, to keep the energy up, to keep the comedy going. Making a film is one of the most boring things you will ever encounter in life. If you get the chance to be in a movie, most of the time, 90% of your time is waiting. And while you're waiting, you're eating junk off the food table, or you're bothering people over there, or you're watching a scene. They had Bobby throw pies, drop ice down people's backs, showing up in takes when he's not supposed to. I mean, it's hilarious. And what a great idea, to keep that energy, the comic energy going. It's so important. Yeah. So, and they became dear, dear friends from that moment on. Bobby even, he's so Italian, he actually laid the stones for Lou's walkway at his home. I kind of like that because that's something like my dad would do with one of his friends,
Yeah.
But his real name was Robert Barbera. There's no Hannah there, just Barbera. And he was born in New York City I think he was a little younger than Lou. Yeah. No, actually he's older than Lou, 1894. He's actually 12 years older than Lou, but he outlived him. He died in 1976 at the age of 81. In Seal Beach. He lived in Seal Beach, one of my favorite little towns in California. And he shows up in classic comedies like Monkey Business with the Marx Brothers. They say he's in Modern Times as one of the workmen on the conveyor belt, but I've never spotted him. He's also in Soup to Nuts, the very first Three Stooges film with Ted Healy and Shemp as the third stooge. Yeah. And probably most famous as Abbott and Costello's goofy sidekick. And he shows up in all the television shows and everything. He's a riot, truly a riot. All right. So we've got the background to, I can't see. I'm going to put on my glasses. That's good. Now I can't see more clearly. So they used to have a budget on the ledgers for pies. And there was a pie company in Los Angeles that thought, my goodness, they love our pies so much, and it's like $10,000 on the budget. It was very important.
Wow.
So one other thing happened during the making of this film, and that is that the boys contracted to do a series of comic books. And this was the very first one, and it's based on Wistful Widow of Wagon Gap. And it went on until 1956.
Wow.
Yeah, so collect those Abbott and Costello comic books. Okay, so we'll get to the cast members as we stumble upon them, as we look at this film. The other thing I wanted to mention about this movie, it was the very first one to have a budget cap placed upon it.
Oh.
The Bill Gates people from Universal International decided that no Abbott and Costello movie should have a budget higher than $750,000. Unfortunately, that was considered B movie money, not A pictures. It was kind of an insult, kind of a slap in the face to these guys who were practically supporting the studio.
Yeah.
So I don't like these people. I don't like these Universal International people. I think they're pompous, and I would ring their doorbell and run, probably for office. Okay, so this one, they did go over budget a little bit, by the way, and I was kind of happy to hear that. So we start with a very funny card reading The West, where men are men, with two exceptions. And we see a stagecoach coming down, and it stops, and it says Wagon Gap, 3 miles. And Bud gets out of the stagecoach and says, "What are you doing? It's still 3 miles." The guy is like, "I'm not going anywhere near Wagon Gap because it's dangerous, and they'll shoot you on sight." So Lou comes out, of course, and I think he falls out of the stagecoach, and Bud actually springs for a pair of guns, so they are protected when they go to Wagon Gap. Unfortunately, his has a nose that's really long. Is that what it's called? A nose on the gun? The barrel. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Who knows? So the barrel, and his barrel is really long, and Lou gets the one that's really short.
Oh, Duke, that ain't fair.
What's wrong?
Look, yours is much longer than mine.
So what? All you have to do is stand closer to whoever's shooting at you.
So with that sort of logic, they have their guns, they have their protection, and the stagecoach rider guy asks them to deliver a letter in Wagon Gap. Now, this is especially fascinating to me because we're going to mention someone who's very important to the Abbott and Costello legend. The letter Lou starts reading is addressed to a guy by the name of Joe Bozzo. Now, if you're an Abbott and Costello appreciator, you've heard Joe Bozzo's name probably more than any other of their personal friends. Mm-hmm. And Lou had a habit of mentioning not only his hometown, but people he knew and friends and family. Even his father, Sebastian, on their radio show, they developed this horrible, I hate it. In fact, I turn them off when this happens. Lou plays his little brother, his own little brother, Sebastian. And he talks like this, and it's very annoying. And it's so funny because he'll be doing that character and he'll go into his real voice and go, "Boy, this is hard." He's talking to himself back and forth. Yeah. But anyway, so what's my point? So Joe Bozzo. Okay. He mentions to Joe Bozzo, Erskine Lakes, New Jersey. Now, I looked up Erskine Lakes, and it's a very high-end resort in New Jersey. I believe it's on the lakes, and if you had money, you went there to vacation. Mm-hmm. So his best friend in Paterson was Joe Bozzo. Joe Bozzo was very involved with the Republican Party in Paterson, New Jersey, but he was also known to be tied in with some rather nefarious criminals. He was friendly with a childhood with Willie Moretti, I think his name was, the guys who took over Hollywood, the union problems and all that stuff. But he grew up with these people. And apparently he was a childhood friend of Lou's, and they remained best friends for years and years. And I think Joe Bozzo even went on their family's first trip to Europe, the Costello family. Huh. They brought Joe Bozzo along. When I asked Lou's daughters about Joe Bozzo and his connections to Paterson and their father, and they just kind of giggled. They looked at each other and giggled and said, "Well, let's just put it this way. When my father got stopped for speeding in Paterson, he never had to pay a ticket." So that kind of told me everything I needed to know. I write about this in the book. Yep. Yes, he was a guy of questionable background and all of that, but I grew up on Long Island in New York, and our next door neighbor was a guy by the name of Big John Aiello. And Big John, we didn't know what he did. He drove a Cadillac, and his garage was finished, and he had pictures of him with celebrities everywhere. I used to stare for hours. We loved this man. We loved him. He was the color of the neighborhood. Now, we don't know what he did for a living. We don't know if he was like breaking people's knuckles or what, but he just happened to be someone we loved very much. He was we didn't know about that, if indeed that was true. So that's how I placed Joe Bozzo. I don't think Lou was a mafioso. I don't think he, was excited about the fact that Joe Bozzo was a mafioso guy. It was just a friend, and business was something else, Anyway, so I thought that was interesting. He really puts it out there. Joe Bozzo, Erskine Lakes, and the letter itself is absolutely hilarious. Let's play that for them.
Joe Bozzo, Erskine Lakes. Dear Sal, this is to let you know we are building a new log house where the old log house stood. We are using the logs from the old log house to build the new log house, but we are going to let the old log house stand until the new log house is built. I don't get it.
What are you reading other people's mail for? Put that away.
Yeah, that's a good
one. That makes absolutely no sense, and I love that. Wonderful. Stop reading other people's mail. So they go to Wagon Gap. And right away, it's like they shoot the sign out from under them. There's gunfighting and cowboys riding around on their horses willy-nilly and all that. And Bud finally says, we've got to show them that we're tough. We've got to show them. So they do their whole thing. I must be brave. I must be strong. I must be brave. I must be strong. I must be nuts. All of that stuff. So Bud says, okay, fire your gun. And Lou's like, where? And he goes, just fire it in the air. Just go ahead. Lou does this thing with his fingers where he goes to fire his gun and he puts his finger in his ear, but he sees that the other ear doesn't have a finger in it. So he takes Bud's hand and puts it in his left ear, then takes his free hand and puts it in his other ear, and then shoots the gun. Now, I mention this because it was stolen by Biffle and Schuster, those lousy, creepy thieves, comedy thieves. Every time we had to put, a loud noise and had to cover our ears, we did the same thing. We stole them the best.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, he shoots off up into the air in the opposite direction, and a dead body falls from a roof. Mm-hmm. Now, it's obvious it wasn't his bullet, but he's blamed, and they want to hang them. They want to hang Bud and Lou. So we meet a couple of the characters. We meet Jake Frame, played by Gordon Jones. Yes, our friend Gordon Jones, who most Abbott and Costello people know as Mike the Cop in the Abbott and Costello television show, one of the few characters to make it into both seasons.
Yeah.
But he was born in 1912 in Alden, Iowa. And he's started out as a very nice-looking leading man in B movies at RKO in the 1930s. And he was the Green Hornet in the serial. And he has really good scenes in Strike Me Pink with Eddie Cantor in 1936. And he's also one of the main characters in a movie called My Sister Eileen, made at Columbia, right, in the early 40s, with a great cameo by the Three Stooges at the very end, which is just a brilliant cameo. It's like whoever came up with that, it's just wonderful. But unfortunately, like Lou, he had a bad heart, and he passed away in 1963. The age of 51. He was only 51. Costello, I'm going to run you in. His last movie was McClintock with John Wayne, and that was in 1963. He was part of John Wayne's stock company. John Ford liked him, and John Wayne liked working with him, too. So anyway, we meet him. He's our villain, Jake Frame. What a great name, Jake Frame. And he's the one who wants to hang them. He's like, let's hang him. Let's just hang him. And William Ching, I love his name, Bill Ching, is the good guy. He's the head of the committee to do everything legally, and no nudity in the movies, and all that. Never mind on the screen,
No.
But anyway, William Ching, born in 1913 in St. Louis, and he was raised in New Orleans. He began as a singer And he did a lot of musical theater touring and stuff, a lot of Rodgers and Hart and things like that. Then he was signed in 1947 to Republic Studios. I used to live around the corner from Republic. It used to be Max Sennett Studios. And he did mostly Westerns and dramas, mostly supporting roles. And he shows up in a couple of really good movies with some nice supporting parts. DOA with Edmund O'Brien, In a Lonely Place with Humphrey Bogart and Gloria Graham. And a really horrible Martin and Lewis movie called Scared Stiff. I always call it Bored Stiff. But anyway, so William Ching versus Gordon Jones. They are the head-to-head about running the town. I'm getting all excited. And one of Jake Frame's assistants, one of his cohorts, is the great Glenn Strange. Now, yes, monster kids know the great Glenn Strange as one of the portrayers of the Frankenstein monster later on, of course. And interestingly, when Boris Karloff passed away in 1969, the New York Times ran a picture of Glenn Strange as the monster. So much for immortality and respect. Yeah. Interestingly, he was born in 1899 in Weed, New Mexico.
Sure.
Weed, New Mexico. It's known as the munchie capital of the world. And I believe Robert and his brother Stack were from there. I'm kidding. Anyway, Glenn Strange, it was half Irish and half Cherokee.
Wow.
And up until he was 13, he spoke Cherokee. And eventually lost it because it was a lost language. Nobody spoke it with him, so he ended up doing that. He played the fiddle, and he would play on radio starting in 1928 in Western bands. He could sing. He was a boxer for a very short time. What I love is that if you look at the Warner Brothers Dick Foran Western series that went on from the early to mid 1930s, you see and hear Glenn Strange singing the songs in the movie. And it's just, if you're a monster kid, it just kind of freaks you out. It's like, wow, Frankenstein singing, cadenza, good. All right. So we've got, he passed away in 1973, by the way, of lung cancer. He did 300 films, 500 TV shows.
Wow.
222 Gunsmoke episodes as Sam the bartender.
Wow.
Yeah. And he played, are you ready? On the Lone Ranger television show. He was in the very first one. He played Butch Cavendish, who killed all the Texas Rangers except one.
Yes.
One lone one.
Wow.
So he played Butch Cavendish. We love Glenn Strange. Glenn Strange can no wrong in my book. Okay, so they take the boys to be hung to an old tree, and they are saved by Mr. Goody Goody, who tells them that they have to go to trial. There's no way we could just kill them. Let's put them on trial. So they take them back to town, where we meet Judge Benbow, played by the great George Cleveland, who was with us in Little Giant.
Yeah.
And he's a crooked judge, and he's just wonderful in this movie. And if this were an A movie, it would have been Charles Winninger. But this is George Cleveland, and I'm glad of it. So he just wants to convict them right away, so he's not bothered. But instead, they go inside the bar, the saloon. I think it's called the Roundup. Yeah, the Roundup. And they place Bud and Lou up front, and the judge chooses the jury, who just happens to be 12 men who are about to hang them.
And they still have the rope with them as they sit in the jury box, too.
Yes, yes, that's true. What hemp? And so anyway, things are settled in the way that the law provides. Simpson, William Ching, reminds the judge of the Montana law that since Lou killed Hawkins, his name was Mr. Hawkins, he would be responsible for Hawkins' debts and to take care of his widow and the widow's 6 children. So it's like I would rather be hung, actually. So he saves their lives, but he's got to go and take care of this horrible woman and her even more horrible children, and not to mention the dog. So who's interestingly called Wolf, and pretty much acts like one. So anyway, the trial is over. They go to meet the widow at the widow's rundown house and farm. And Lou looks over and says, they must grow corn or something. There's a scarecrow. It turns out to be Marjorie Main, who's just hanging up some clothing. What do you mean, scarecrow? She's wonderful. And she is one of the very few people since Dick Powell to get billing above the title with Bud and Lou.
Yes.
And that's all based on her Oscar nomination and the money that the Egg Eye was making. And before I forget, this movie itself was Universal's 4th biggest moneymaker that year.
Ah.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of that had to do with Marjorie Main as well. So anyway, they meet the family, and my favorite Bud scene comes up. And this is where Bud is just amazing. He's just fantastic. First of all, he tries to get them both out of this situation. He said, we'll give you what money we have, and we'll mail you a little bit each month. Well, when he mentions how much money he has, $70, the judge says, well, that $70, it just happens to be owed to me by Hawkins. So he takes Bud's money. So things go back and forth, and Bud finally says to the judge, how about if we gamble? And we'll see which one of us has to stay and take care of the widow. And the judge says, okay, it's legal to gamble here. No, you could do that. So Bud turns to Lou, and I think we should play this because it's typical Bud, and it's just wonderful.
Judge, you have no objections if we gamble for this.
Well, there's no law against gambling, providing it's honest.
I'll play it as honest as you would.
Well, go ahead, get it over with.
Take a card. Anyone? Any card, I won't even look. Don't look at it.
You didn't give me a chance. You hit me down too fast.
Don't try to cheat. Play it on the up and up. Oh, what card were you thinking of?
What card was I thinking of?
What card were you thinking of? Come on, get it over with.
I was thinking of the 9 of clubs.
Oh, no, it was the 8 of spades. I'm terribly
Was the
sorry.
card you were thinking
yes,
of?
that
The
was
8 of
the card,
spades?
yes.
How do you know it was the 8 of spades?
Just a minute. What does that look like?
The 8 of spades.
Well, what are you hollering about?
I mean, but that ain't a bit fair.
Just a minute, please. Just a minute, I'll leave it to the judge.
Go ahead.
Judge, do you think that was fair and square?
That's the way I'd have done it.
That's what I thought.
So I just love that. I just love
Yes.
What card were you thinking of? And the judge saying, well, that's the way I would have done it. It's okay
Yep.
with me. So Bud actually does himself in afterwards. He does such a flowery goodbye scene with Lou. Oh, I'm going to miss you and my buddy, and I can't imagine life without you, and this and that. And the judge and Marjorie Main are almost in tears, are saying, we can't break up, you guys. I'll tell you what, you're the guardian and you're the custodian to the guardian. So Bud is made, he has to be there too. He blew it. So anyway, one of my favorite jokes in the movie is here. And it's a bit of an adult joke. But when we first meet the widow, she says, all he ever did was gamble and drink. That's all he ever did. Drink and gamble, drink and gamble. And then Lou sees the 6 children and says, oh, all he ever did was drink and gamble, huh? And it's kind of thrown away,
Yep.
I will say that Lou is, I don't know if it was because of his dad passing away during this time or what, but he gives a very subdued, not mannered in the sense that it looks phony, but I'm saying it's a very subdued performance compared to a lot of his others. There's very little screaming. There's not so much falling down, and things like that. It's more character driven. And Bud is equal. He's equal in this movie, which I love. Because a lot of times, the focus is on Lou and Bud is sort of like a beefed up supporting character. In this one, they're both in this situation and they both have to get out of it. They both have to deal with it. And it's just great to see Bud as Lou's equal in this movie. So anyway, they are honor bound to take care of this family. And then we meet Juanita. Woo-woo! Juanita. She happens to be a very, very beautiful young lady. I don't know how she came out of Marjorie, Maine, but she did come out of the main highway, and looking looking the way she looks. But Audrey Young was born in 1922 in Los Angeles. As a young lady, she sang with the Tommy Dorsey Band and a few other bands. And then she was signed by Paramount in 1944. And she appears as a hat check girl in the movie The Lost Weekend by Billy Wilder. And by 1949, she and Billy Wilder got married. You know, it's just amazing. This short Austrian leprechaun married this gorgeous Audrey Long, just a beautiful, beautiful woman. And they were married until Billy died in 2002. And when he died, she took $5 million of their money and created the Billy Wilder Theater in Westwood, Los Angeles, and a place I used to go to practically every other week because they had the best revival movies there. So what a great gift to the town that, you know, they thrived in. They were married till 2002, and then she passed away in 2012. So interestingly, there is an outtake from this film between Bud Abbott and a different actress. It's not Audrey Young. It's a lady by the name of Patricia Alphen. And you see this scene, but they're washing dishes and they're talking. Then you see another scene, and it's not Patricia Alphen, it's Audrey Young. Apparently, Patricia Alphen got ill while they were shooting and was replaced by Audrey Young, who got one of the bigger roles in her career in Wistful Widow of Wagon Cow. So it's interesting. If you look at the outtakes, you'll see this. You'll see Bud working with a completely different actress. So we met Audrey Young. Let's talk a little bit about Marjorie Main. Marjorie Main was born, I hope.
Rumor has it, yes.
Rumor has it that she was born, but only in the sense that she was born. So anyway, Marjorie Main, born in 1890, marked down from 1900. No, I'm kidding. 1890 as Mary Tomlinson in Acton, Indiana. Her father was a very serious pastor. There was a very religious family, and they moved around a lot. They were either religious or not honest. She ended up going to Franklin College in Indiana and then transferred to the Hamilton School of Dramatic Expression in Lexington, Kentucky. And she was there for a while. And then she got a teaching position at Bourbon College in Paris, Kentucky. And she was let go after a year when she asked for a raise. So she studied in Chicago for a while. Then she moved over to New York and studied acting there, started getting roles in stock companies and Shakespearean companies. And in 1921, she married a psychologist and lecturer by the name of Stanley Lefavre Krebs. How's that for a name? It's like out of Preston Sturges. So they lived together in New York City. You know, he had some money. And she did acting part-time, but he tended to rely on her too much, and it became an awful lot for her. He was older than she was. She had to really take care of him and, the business of running the household and his accounts and all this stuff. And she really resented it. And she said that her entire marriage was a very non-traditional one, meaning that they both went their separate ways. Mm-hmm. He lived his life, she lived hers. There was talk of her being a lesbian, that she had a long-time affair with Spring Byington, the actress. But I also heard that Margaret Livingston, the actress, was also a paramour of Spring Byington. Apparently Spring sprung a lot. So anyway, Marjorie Main during the years. She was with John Barrymore on tour in a show called Cheating Cheaters. She debuted on Broadway in a show called Yes or No in 1918. She played the Palace with W.C. Fields, playing W.C. Fields' harridan of a wife in his act called The Family Ford. She played Mae West's mother in the Broadway show The Wicked Age in 1927, and she was only 2 years older than Mae.
Wow.
That must have been quite a delivery. Eventually, 2 roles got Hollywood to stand up and take notice. One was as the gangster's mother in Dead End by Sidney Kingsley with the Dead End Kids.
Yeah.
And then the other one was as the woman who took care of the women in The Women, the George S. Kaufman, Edna Ferber show. I believe it's Edna Ferber. And both of those roles she did the movies of, which doesn't happen very often.
No.
So she did Dead End in 1937 or 36, and then the other one, The Women, in 1939. So based on the success of that role, MGM signed her to a contract in 1940, where she had the unenviable task of making 7 movies with Wallace Beery. Nobody liked working with Wallace Beery. Not even Wallace Beery. He was just he was a very contentious bastard, actually. I mean, hold your ears, children, if you're listening, but Jackie Cooper's aunt used to call him that fat Polish prick. Okay. Yeah, very alliterative. Okay. Like the wistful widow of Wagon Gown. So, okay. So she married this guy. And again, a non-traditional thing. And she did a lot of stuff in her career. He died of cancer in 1935. So she was free of him to do those roles and eventually go to Hollywood. So here's what happened. She was loaned out to Universal in 1947 to make The Egg and I. Turned out to be a huge game changer for her, nominated for an Oscar. And like I told you before, Universal started the series, Ma and Pa Kettle series. The last one was her last movie, 1957's The Kettles on Old MacDonald's Farm. Percy Kilbride was gone by that time. Not dead, but he left the series. It was Parker Fennelly this time. Petridge Farm remembers. Right? So, interestingly, her last real work was 2 episodes of Wagon Train in 1958. And then she retired to a very comfortable Palm Springs, I believe it was. She was very into spiritualism. She was very quiet and dignified in real life. She was a germaphobe. She's been known to, like the children in the Ma and Pa Kettle series, if the children got too close, they were admonished. If they were touching her, they could have been fired. That's how much of a germaphobe she was. She also spoke to her dead husband on a regular basis. Lou absolutely loved this. He loved this. It used to tickle him. He would look over to the corner before they'd shoot a scene, and she would be huddled down talking to her dead husband, getting permission to do what she wanted to do, going over the scene with him. I mean, and Lou just would giggle like to no end. So anyway, at one point, I wanted to mention that Lou wanted to hit Marjorie Main with a pie during, the background, while they weren't shooting. So he got with Bobby Barber and he told him, I'm going to get a pie and I'm going to hit Marjorie with it. And he went, great, that's a great idea. So Bobby goes to Marjorie Main and tells her what Lou is planning and helps her set it up that the pie ended up in Lou's face. So, and Lou did not care at all. He was having the time of his life. Wow. I love that. Bobby was a smart cookie. Very, very good. All right. So, the boys have to work on this horrible farm. And they have to do things like, pump the water and milk the whatever and paint the fence. And I really love the fence painting scene because Bud gets the punchline, which doesn't happen very often. In fact, he gets a couple in this movie that made me laugh out loud. In this one, Lou and the oldest son are hitting each other in the face with the whitewash. And Bud comes up, "What are you doing? You're making a mess." And he takes the brush away. And when Marjorie Main comes up to see what's going on, of course, she sees Bud holding the brush, and she smacks him in the face with the whitewash, which is very unusual for Bud, So they were trying new things. The other thing was, I think they're in the bar and they're talking about the stage. So we'll stop the stage when it comes. Yes, and then the stage will stop, and then the stage will go to the bar. No, and then the stage will go to the bar, and then you cut to Bud, and he goes, "This is well staged." It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
No,
but it works. It definitely works. Okay, so Lou has to work for the widow, and she's a real taskmaster, and she wants him to marry her. She has a thing for Lou, and she wants him to marry her, and Lou will not. He just will not do it. So she thinks, maybe with my cooking I can, coerce him into marriage. So she makes a nice dinner, and the boys sit down, and the scene coming up is what every critic talked about and every audience claimed as the funniest scene in the picture, and I have to agree. This is the frog in the soup bit.
Yep.
Now, a lot of people compare it to the oyster scene, the oyster stew scene, which, it does resemble, no doubt.
Yep.
But this adds an element. This frog is able to jump where an oyster is not able to jump.
Yep.
So the frog, when Lou, reaches down to the soup, the frog comes up and gives it a rabbit, right? And Lou is like all freaked out. So at one point, he switches soup with Bud. He said, "Can I have your soup and you can have my soup?" And he switches, and he's looking at Bud's soup. And while he's looking at Bud's soup, the frog had jumped into his glass of milk, right? So when he changes the soup and looks at Bud's soup, the frog jumps out of the milk into Bud's soup, which is now in front of Lou. I hope I explained that well enough. Okay. So this is the difference between the oyster scene and this one. And this one is, I think, better because of it.
Yeah.
There's more mobility, and every time it jumps into the milk and jumps out again, that makes all the difference to me. And then when it finally comes up and gives him the raspberry, and he starts hitting it and whatever. There's an outtake in the Wistful Widow outtakes, which I believe are on YouTube, where this scene happens and the frog jumps out of the soup, but whoever's handling the frog on a wire loses control, and the frog is flying around above them as everybody's laughing and trying to get a hold of it. So the frog was not very complacent at the time, which reminds me, and I hear you coughing, Jerry, and I want you to sit back and relax for a second, because we have some footage actually regarding this frog scene. From Kevin Brownlow, who sent me this stuff actually last night via Stagecoach to keep in line with the mood of today's podcast. And this is what happened. The frog was not doing its best work, was not paying attention, and was going off on its own. And Lou became very upset about it. And here's some recording. He asked Bud to help him out here. Let's turn this on. Hold on. The frog isn't helping me at all. He keeps jumping around. You got to do something, Bud. All right, Lou. Don't worry about it. Sit down. I'll talk to the frog. Don't worry. Hey, frog. Ribbit. Yeah, whatever. Listen, you got to stick to the script. You can't, jump around and fly. They can't know you're on a wire. You can't wear a wire. This isn't the mafia. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, and the warts. What's with the warts? What are you, one of the Warts brothers? All right. Now, you got to jump out and say your line. You know what I'm saying? You remember your line? Your line. You remember it? All right. Listen, let me give you some hints. Okay. You have a boring condom. What do? Ribbit. That's right. You ribbit. Very, very good. Now, you go to a frog friar's roast. What do you do to the frog? Ribbit. That's right, you ribbit. This is very good. You're very smart. You're a smart frog. You should be able to do this. You should be able to do this. All right. And don't worry about the warts, honestly. They'll grow on you, I promise. All right, now let's try it. That's all we have. But boy, Bud's commitment to getting a good performance is just it's life affirming. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I'd like to thank Kevin for that.
But it also demonstrates an incredible double standard. The fact that Bud is so adamant that the frog sticks to the script when they never did.
Yes,
you know, it's.
Well, Bud gave the excuse that he and Lou were not amphibians.
Oh,
so,
okay.
You know, so they were Knights of Pythias. Okay. So here's the deal with this movie. The main thing is, and the pun unintended, Marjorie really wants Lou and will do anything to get him. And every time she turns him down, she gets a little bit more vengeful, makes him do more work, you know, all that stuff. Now, there's a love scene on the porch. And before she enters, Lou is alone on the porch with his thoughts. And I want you to play this because this is one of my all-time favorite Lou Costello scenes. Here we go.
What a night.
I love the stars. I love the moon. I'd love December if it came in June. Ay.
Oh, lovely.
Did you like it?
Uh-huh. Sit down, Mr. Woolley.
Thank you.
Loose your tie. Go ahead, loose your tie.
I don't know you that well.
Oh, land sakes, man, I want you to make yourself to home. Now, Mr. Woolley, I ain't a person to beat around the bush. I'm a woman, you're a man.
Mrs. Hawkins, that's the nicest thing anybody ever said to me.
Well, Mr. Woolley, Chester, a woman means a lot to a man, and a man can mean a lot to a woman. Me and Hawkins didn't get along. He never come home. Oh, I've been a lonesome woman around here these past few years.
I know just how you feel. I've been awful lonesome myself.
Have you? Mr. Woolley, haven't you ever wanted somebody waiting for you when you come home at night? Somebody to kiss you when you open the front door? Someone whose hair you caress with a loving touch? Someone whose presence would cheer and warm you? Haven't you ever wanted to embark on the sea of matrimony? Your boat of bridal wreath and orange blossoms crosses the shoals of acquaintance into the sea of affection. The tempest of love causes the waves of emotion to toss you helter-skelter, hither and thither, here and yon, round and round.
Stop the boat. I'm getting seasick.
Okay, so they do their little love scene on the porch, and Lou turns her down and escapes into he and Bud's bedroom, and they lock the door. Unfortunately, they want to escape. They want to leave, but her German Shepherd, Wolf, will not let them leave. And they have to, do some fancy dancing to get around the dog. And the dog is so good.
Yes.
But while you're watching, isn't he great?
Yes.
But think about this. As I was watching, if you watch the dog's eyes, he's not paying attention to them at all. He's looking right past them.
Yep.
At his trainer, who's just off camera, and it's obvious, yes, but it's just amazing what they can get this dog to do. So anyway, they can't escape, and mornings are terrible because Lou can't get any breakfast. He's always too late. He does a scene at the pump. He has to go get water, and of course, it's a problem every time he tries it. But we see the frog again. He shows up to give Lou a hard time. Apparently, this was the frog's last film, and he retired after that to Palm Springs, where he worked on his memoirs called Warts and All, and it was quite a failure. So anyway, much like that joke. So we see some of the stuff Lou has to do. Bud offers to help while he's still in bed with 3 children. Bud says, I'll help you out. I'll watch the kids. And he goes back to sleep. Um, so Lou has to shoe the horse. And of course, he puts his own shoes onto the horse. And there's one thing where he's being chased, I think, by the widow or the dog. He's being chased by the dog and the clothesline.
Yes.
He's running full speed. He hits the clothesline at his neck, and they cut to a dummy that just spins around like 10 times before it falls to the ground, and then we see it's Lou. It's a really nice touch, a really almost Max Sennett like.
Yes.
Very funny. So anyway, here's the plot enters again, and Juanita, the beautiful daughter, is being asked by Jake Frame, our villain, to work as a singer in his saloon. And Lou and Marjorie Main are dead set against that. No, my daughter is not singing in a saloon, blah, blah, blah. So Jake Frame says, somebody's going to have to pay off what your dead husband owes me. So Lou will have to work all day at the widow's place and then all night at the saloon. So Lou is screwed, in other words. So he has to go and do that, and it's hard work, and he's tired, he's not sleeping. But it turns out, and this is where it gets a little complicated, Bud devises a plan where he'll play poker, but Lou, who is cleaning a spittoon with a mirrored bottom. Now, maybe a little weird, a mirrored bottom on a spittoon. But Bud gets the idea of having him stand behind the other players, and the reflection of the spittoon will read to Bud, and Bud will act accordingly. Well, it turns out that it works, and they make a lot of money. So they decide that they're going to do it one more time. But Jake Frame gets involved. And so does Marjorie Main, so does the widow. And they decide that Lou is being spread too thin, and they were going to play poker to see who gets him full time. So they're going to play it the same way. Bud and Lou are, they have the mirror set up and all that. Now, you got the impression that the widow knew what was going on from the beginning. Right? You see her face. Also, interestingly, we go back to the dice game in Buck Privates, where Lou says, I don't know how to play this game, and of course he knows everything about it, and he blames the clubhouse taught him. Yeah. Well, in this one, it's the widow who says, I've never played poker before. This is crazy. But then you cut to a close-up of somebody's hands.
Yes.
They're not hers, but somebody's hands, and they're doing all these gymnastics with the cards, and it's very impressive. And of course, Bud and Lou are looking at each other like, what are we getting into? And every time they look at her, she'll say Hawkins. That's clubhouse, in other words. Her husband Hawkins taught her to do these things. So anyway, she's on to them. She wins the hand. Lou faint, dead away, and it doesn't work. So here's what happens. This is the whole thing with the stagecoach and the gold shipment and all of that. Jake Frame knows there's a gold shipment coming that week. So he tells Lou, I will give you 2 fast horses and a steak, and you could go to California. Lou says, I'll take the 2 horses, but you can keep the steak. I'm not hungry. I love that. So anyway, it turns out that he says, if you can find out the day that shipment is coming, I will do that for you. And Lou's like, okay, that's great. Okay, I'll be right back. He goes to William Ching, who is the goody-goody guy, and he asks, when is the shipment coming? And he lets it slip that Jake Frame wants to know. So William Ching, decides to give him the wrong day. And he tells him it's Thursday, when it's actually Wednesday. So Lou has the wrong information. But before he goes to Jake Frame with that information, he goes to check it out with Bud. And Bud says, you know what? Jake is probably going to rob the gold. So tell him a different day. Tell him Wednesday. So because of Bud's, insecurities, Jake Frame actually hears the right day.
Yep.
So they screwed up big time. So it turns out that they tell Simpson that it's happening, and they get together a posse to meet the crooks. So here's what happens. Lou discovers a superpower that he has. And that's the law, the Montana law, that if anyone kills Lou, they have to take on the widow and the children and the debts and the work. So Lou carries a picture of the widow and her children in his back pocket. All he has to do is show it, and nobody in their right minds would hurt him. Mm-hmm. So he becomes like the town bully. It's hilarious. There's Dewey Robinson, the great big hulking character actor, is drunk and shooting up the saloon. And Lou comes in to take care of it. And of course, he looks at Lou like he's a bug until Lou takes out the picture and tells him, if you kill me, you're going to inherit all of this. Their dynamic changes on a dime, and it's absolutely hilarious. Every time Dewey Robinson tries to say something, Lou will say, "Shut up," and he'll go, "Yes, sir." Shut up. And it's very funny. So Lou discovers this power he has. So William Ching is watching this and says to his cohorts, "I think we just found our new sheriff. Nobody in their right minds would kill him, So they make Lou the sheriff, and he starts taming the town. He walks into a saloon when he feels like it. He tells everyone to shut up. He buys everybody milk. He does one thing with his gun where he flips the gun. It's one of the tricks he does. In fact, I try to imitate it all the time. But he flips the gun, and when he catches it, it's pointing at him. And for a split second, he raises his hands like he's holding himself up. It's a split second, but it's just so wonderful. Yep. It's so Lou. So Lou's got this superpower, blah, blah, blah. So they have to go meet the stagecoach before Frame takes it and takes all the gold. And as they're on their way to that, they realize that the widow had stolen the picture from out of his back pocket and left him helpless. So as they're in their buckboard, going to, meet the stagecoach and arrest, what's his name, Jake Frame, they start talking about the picture. Lou reaches for it and realizes that it's gone, and suddenly he's on Bud's side and says, "Let's go to California. Let's get out of here. They're going to kill me." So they turn the stuff around. They start leaving, and they run right into the widow, who has her rifle, saying, "I knew you'd come this way. I knew once you saw the picture was gone." So they hightail it, and that starts the big chase that is becoming actually the regular thing in these Abbott and Costello movies. Yeah. And as they're rushing away from the widow, who's following them on horseback, the buckboard starts falling apart. One wheel falls off, then another wheel falls off, then the axle comes and they're dragging and whatever. So they make a sharp turn, and Lou falls off the wagon, rolls down a cliffside, and lands right on top and through the stagecoach as Frame and his men are robbing it. So he's there. You see his upper part of his body at the top of the stagecoach, and he goes away with the stagecoach. He saves the gold, and he drives it into town. Well, here's something I forgot to tell you. And again, this is the complicated plot. Mm-hmm. Bud decides at one point, this is before any of this happens, he decides he's going to lie to the judge and tell him that the widow is expecting a contract from the railroad to go through her land, and she will become the richest woman in the county. Now, he's saying this because if the judge marries the widow, then Lou is off the hook and they can go to California. Mm-hmm. So he tells the judge that, and the judge lets it slip to Jake Frame and his gang. Suddenly, everyone wants to kill Lou. So, not just the Universal executives. I mean, these people. And so anyway, we start this whole thing. It's a classic saloon fight, every cliche in the book, people flying off the balconies onto tables, and even Murray Leonard, their burlesque pal from Lost in the Harem and In Society, he shows up as the evil bartender, and Lou really gives it to him in this one. It's really funny. So anyway, they're doing the big fight, and and Lou's dressed like a woman for part of it because nobody would hit it or shoot a woman. But anyway, it turns out that the women of the town saved the day. They come in and they beat up all the crooks and everyone gets arrested. And William Ching and Juanita somehow end up together at the end. Somehow. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know if they cut 10 love scenes. Right?
You almost get the impression that we get to this point in the film and the screenwriters go, oh, wait, we need a love story to finish. Quick, throw this scene in.
Yeah, we forgot. Oh, no, we better put it in here. Let's force it in here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I also found it interesting in this movie that a lot of the bad guys, the Western bad guys, were fat. And they all referred to Lou as fat. Hey, fatty. Hey, fatso. Yeah. Hey, you little fat guy. And these guys were like obese compared to Lou. I always found that kind of funny. So that happens. The town is cleaned up. Jake Frame and his gang are arrested. Juanita and William Ching, they get to know each other on the honeymoon. And suddenly the judge announces that he's marrying the widow. And the widow gives Lou first dibs. You could tell she likes the little fat guy.
Yeah.
And she says, unless you change your mind. And Lou says, no, I'm not going to change my mind. So the judge and Marjorie Main are engaged. And Bud admits to his lie about the railroad. And as he's saying it, the widow says, wait a minute, where did you hear about that? I'm going to be the richest woman in the county. And the judge is marrying her, and they're going to be wealthy and happy. The ending scene, Bud and Lou are on their way to California. They're in their buckboard. And, of course, Bud is admonishing Lou for not marrying the widow. Mm-hmm. And Lou is like, you know what? I feel really good about this whole episode because not only did I get to be a sheriff, but I got to clean up the town and there are no more guns in Wagon Gap. And he throws the rifle away. It lands on the ground and goes off. And that signals about 50 Indians to start chasing them and woo, as they ride off into the distance and are probably scalped and killed.
Yeah.
Horribly. So, and that's it. That's the end of Wistful Widow of Wagon Gap. And I have to say that, you know, if you are going to watch it, our listeners, if you are going to see it, I want you to realize that it really is a good Western.
Yeah.
With a good hook. That whole thing about the Montana law. Mm-hmm. Excellent stuff. And try to picture Jimmy Stewart, you know? Now, who's on first? I'm just not following it. Never mind. How? Anyway, this is a big hit. Again, it's their fourth highest grossing film of that year. Universal International. The reviews, most of the reviews said that Marjorie Main was the best leading lady they ever had. And I have to say that she really fits in well. Yes. In their world, in their universe, and vice versa. They, you know, she's very, her shtick in this movie is she's very flowery. She's very sweet at one point, you know, mm-hmm. she'll try to draw you in with colorful, you know, language and poetry. And then when that doesn't work, she goes back to Ma Kettle, you know, shut up. And that's her shtick, and it works really well with the guys. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Bud is just as important as Lou in this movie. They share some wonderful scenes together. I know they were getting along because they opened Lou Costello Jr. Youth Center, and I know Bud was very, very proud to be part of that. Mm-hmm. And that was a very healing thing for the two of them, from what I understand. So next movie that we talk about, number 22, episode number 22, mm-hmm. Bud and Lou were able to make one outside film from Universal every year. And this next one turned out to be one of the best films they ever made. You know, luckily they used a lot of their Universal people, and it just turned out to be, again, not just a good Abbott and Costello movie, but a good movie with a good plot. Yeah, and some great people. Some great people. First and foremost, the great Leon Errol, the great comedian from Australia. He plays beautifully with the boys, and he probably did a lot of their routines before they even knew about them, back in burlesque. But also Joseph Kalia, who is one of my favorite actors, actually. You might remember him in, what's the Orson Welles movie with Charlton Heston? Oh boy, we're old.
In Mexico.
Yeah. And Joe Collia is his loyal partner who doesn't know that he's a dishonest cop.
Touch of Evil?
Touch of Evil. That's it. Yeah. And he gives a great performance in that. And he's terrific in this one as the lead gangster. And he does the telephone routine with Lou, and he's just having the time of his life. Yeah. So let's talk about that next week. It's a movie called The Noose Hangs High. And you're going to see and hear some of the best burlesque routines you've ever heard at one sitting. It's amazing. Right, Jer? It's amazing.
Yes.
So anyway, I can't recommend Wistful Widow of Wagon Gap anymore because it really is an entertaining 78 minutes. You'll be happy you sat through it. And it really is a very, very good movie. So enjoy it. And Jerry, I'm really hoping for your recovery as far as your health. You're welcome.
It's a long, slow road. Not the least factor being that my wife is a school teacher. So you know what school buildings can be like as far as festering germs and illness. So, yeah.
That would be a good name for your book, Festering Germs and Illness. By Dario.
I don't know how my son would feel about that title, but you know.
Oh God, Uncle Festering.
Yeah.
But I always thought that was a funny name, Fester. It really conjures up disgusting images in your head. Anyway, speaking of disgusting images, I have to say goodbye now to my good friend Jerry. And everybody, I'm going to have to stress this, and I'm kind of serious now. Please, if you listen to our podcast on YouTube, it's very, very important that you press like and that you subscribe. We can't go forward, really, without your help. And we're not asking for anything monetarily or anything. Just give us indications that you're aboard, and you're not bored, but aboard, and that you like what you're listening to. And we'd really appreciate that a lot. Okay, gang, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And Jerry, again, speedy recovery.
Thank you.
I look forward to our next go-around.
As do I. Episode 22 on the horizon. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, my friend, and don't call me a eunuch. Bye, everybody.